the current situation in the conflict area indicate there is a military progress to the government, and the LTTE's territory is now confined to certain areas of Mullaitivu. And this has definitely caused tremendous amount of demoralization to the LTTE. Any armed groups cannot sustain their military morale without achieving a progress at the battleground. And this is the only sort of way that they sustain their military morale, and it is the indications are very clear that LTTE is being totally demoralized due to this current phase of the conflict. Because the government has gained a superior technology in terms of fighting power, in terms of human resources. They have gained superiority than the LTTE. And more importantly, also the split within the LTTE has also helped government and their intelligence to gain information, also make various infiltration inroads into the LTTE area. So given this situation, it is very likely that the LTTE's territory will be further reduced through these ongoing military offenses, because the government is not at all bothered about the military casualties in relation to this war. And as it is estimated that almost more than 15,000 armed personnel were killed in this current phase of conflict for the last 2 years, whereas relatively LTTE casualties are much lesser. And that indicates that the government is not at all concerned about the consequence of the war other than capturing the territory. So that's given the kind of a scenario, it is very likely that the LTTE will be pushed to a corner, or that the entire territory will be taken over. In that circumstances, LTTE has two options. The one option is that they transform themselves into a guerrilla warfare, given that there are opportunities for the leaders to escape into a safer havens or to other countries. That's important. And as an experienced guerrilla warfare as in the past, given the current kind of a socio-political situation, they may be able to survive as a guerrilla, non-territorial guerrilla fighters for the next 2 to 3 years. The second option is that they go fight until the death. And it is very unlikely to expect the LTTE to surrender in this conflict, especially the leadership, because given the kind of attitudes and the kind of ethno-ideological behavior, it's very unlikely that they are going to surrender to the government troops. So if the peace is to be achieved through this military victory, because we know this is a very intractable conflict, and the intractable and deep-rooted conflicts cannot be addressed easily unless the easy way of transforming the conflict is that one of the party cease to be a viable contender in the battleground. So if that is the situation that's going to arise, then the government have to seriously consider of transforming this conflict through a democratic means after the taking over the territory. In that sense, they have to allow a democratic space for the Tamil people to ensure a democratic politics and the democratic process to elect their own representatives to govern in their own areas through a form of a self-governance system that needs also devolution of power and decentralization of administration and so on. In this respect, government should not manipulate the process by trying to really promote their own loyal Tamil groups, the ex-militant groups and others who are now associated with the government, which will be detrimental to the Tamil interest. And therefore, in that respect, it is important to ensure the law and order in that region. And to ensure the law and order, it is also important the institutions and the institutions that is responsible to enforce law and order need to be decommunalized, and it has to be a multi-ethnic. not only in the composition, in the numerical composition, but also in the ideological transformation. They need to respect the multi-ethnic nature of the society and the multi-religious nature of the society. Especially the armed forces and the police have been mobilized in a very intensive communal mobilization over the decades because of this war that is between the Tamil militants and the government which was representing the single interest. So this is very important. And thirdly, it is also important to the government to create an appropriate governance mechanism in the region in such a way where a political and economic inclusion and a totally non-discriminatory process is guaranteed, and along with an accelerated reconstruction and rebuilding, reconstruction and rehabilitation process that should really convince the people, because people in these regions have lost their belongings several occasions, not only once or twice, several occasions, and for the last 2 decades their entire progress has been betrayed because of this. And fortunately, most of these people have access to receive money from abroad, and that's the kind of way they were able to sustain their living. And it is not only the regional mechanism, also the nationally, the entire political structure and the constitutional structure should be transformed in such a way to get from the current majoritarian rule governance into a multi-ethnic consensual governance. And whatever the appropriate institutions need to be created and political structures need to be created, that need to be guaranteed through the constitutional process in order to make sure that national decision making is no longer confined to one party or a one ethnic group or fulfill one ethnic interest. It should be an inclusive, multi-ethnic and multi-religious decision making process. So this is the only way that the space for a democratic space can be secured and the space for any future militant activities can be eliminated.